Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen. And my guest this week is Fiona Pimentel. Did I pronounce that right? Oh, good. Okay,
You
I
did,
forgot to ask.
yes.
I do that a lot. I always seem to forget until I'm recording. Ah, yes. And Fiona and I have met. We met in doing some coaching that we're both involved in. And I asked her if she'd like to come on the podcast and talk to us a little bit about what she's doing in particular. And I'll let her introduce herself and what the different kinds of coaching and people that she's talking to and dealing with, and what she's learning about that. So welcome,
Yeah,
Fiona.
thank you, Susan. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for having me. So as Susan said, we met in a coaching community where I learned how to coach. I thought I already knew how to coach because I had done a couples therapy course, and I was said that I was a couples coach and I was coaching couples, but it turned out I wasn't actually coaching them. I was teaching them, mentoring them, and which in a lot of cases they actually need. But
Yeah.
when I joined the Insight coaching community, I learned how to do pure coaching, which is based more on asking questions and letting people get their own insights instead of us giving them to them.
Right.
And I found that when I started my coaching practice, I started doing coaching exchanges with other coaches just to practice and learn my skills. I found that I really loved it. I really enjoyed coaching coaches. Found that I enjoyed my exchanges with women more than with men. So I eventually set up a Facebook group, the name of which is Called to Courage. And it's helping women to grow in their confidence so that they can step into their purpose. And a lot of women, I think, have this idea of there should be more to life than this. Maybe they've got a job, they're looking after small children, and they kind of feel frustrated. I know I certainly felt frustrated when I left university, with a degree, and then I did a postgrad course, and then suddenly I was married with children. I'm like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life folding socks and cooking. You cook and then the meal has disappeared and you've got to go and buy another one. So now I was preparing that one. So I always had this feeling that I wanted to help other people with their lives and help them to avoid suffering. And I had experienced bullying at school and depression and things like that. Other people to suffer what I had suffered. So, and I also had relationship problems. So that's why I learned about relationships. I spent about 30 years reading self-development books and learned so much. But it was really only when I started learning things like coaching and doing my couples therapy course that I really did I implemented a lot of the self-development. Because it's all very well reading about it, but you've actually got to implement it. So.
Funny how that goes, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same with a lot of coaches, that we kind of help ourselves along the way as we're helping other people.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us get into it, at one time or another, just because we're looking for help and for new ways of looking at life and dealing with life. Yeah. No, for sure. So tell me a little bit about, we were talking about with, particularly with women, obviously, because with menopause and how that age group seems to be attracted to you, but also attractive to you to work with.
Well, I mean, obviously being a woman of a certain age, I find that I will naturally kind of talk to women of similar kind of age. Which isn't to say that I'll only speak with people my age. I've got 2 clients who are in their 20s, but that was mainly through their mothers.
Okay.
So, I mean, people of my age have come to me for coaching, and I've also received from people of my age. And what I find is one thing that a lot of us have in common is we seem to be experiencing the symptoms of ADHD, whether or not we've been diagnosed. So I think a lot of people really have symptoms of ADHD without being diagnosed, and it's not necessary to get a diagnosis. But the sort of things I'm talking about are being very sensitive, your emotions, feeling them very deeply. I mean, for myself, actually, I have a hypersensitivity to things like caffeine. So I drink about maybe 6 cups of coffee when I was in my 20s.
Well, no wonder. Yeah.
But now, if I have a cup of coffee after about 10 o'clock in the morning, it will keep me up for the whole night. So, So that type of hypersensitivity to kind of chemicals, I guess. And also hypersensitivity to things like labels on clothes. It's just like really itchy. So having to cut them off. So, but also things like trying to balance. I mean, my kids are grown up now, but a lot of the women I've come across have got younger kids. They're still trying to balance working with looking after children. And it's something that, men take it for granted. They go to work. Mostly, they go to work and their wife kind of looks after the children as well as working. I mean, I don't know. Obviously some men do help a lot, which is great.
Well, some men have the children and not the. I mean, exactly.
Exactly.
Their ex-wife, mother isn't around anymore. Not very much. Yeah.
Absolutely. But in many cases, women are trying to balance.
Oh yeah, job in most, I think, yeah.
And looking after kids, and then if they're trying to start a business as well, like if they're becoming a coach, that's another thing to add to their bag, and it's a lot, and they feel very overwhelmed. So that's the sort of thing I help women with, dealing with that overwhelm and helping them to manage their time. And sometimes it's a very kind of, it feels like a bad problem, but at the same time, it's a very, very simple solution. When I sit down with them and I literally talk about all the things that they have to do and all the things that they want to include in their life, and we just schedule it into their Google Calendar.
Okay.
Yeah. And I find that these things, they need scheduling. Like, for example, when I started coaching, sometimes I would do back-to-back calls, and then I'd realize that I hadn't walked the dog. And there would be some messes in my house that I think, so I had to schedule walking the dog into my calendar to remind myself. Because that's another thing with people with ADHD, is there's the hyper focus, which is when you're just concentrating on something so much that you don't notice anything else. That can happen too.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, they get obsessed.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems to me that the whole idea of scheduling and really spending more time and putting attention on scheduling, on your schedule, right, is something that everybody needs to do. Okay. But I think that, people with ADHD don't look at that, right? They're not seeing that. Whereas most other people, especially if they're working and have kids and kids have activities and stuff, most of those people have schedules.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people, and this from my own experience as well, is, you think you don't need it. Oh no, it's okay. I can take care of it. I'll just keep it all in my head.
Yeah,
It's like,
that's very
no, that's not a schedule. That's just in your head.
true. I mean, I remember when my kids were still going to school in the
Uh-huh.
where I was just always rushing, was always late, no matter where
Mhm.
I was going, but I was always late. And now, ever since I started my coaching business, and I'm using Google Calendar, I'm always on time for
Uh-huh.
everything. And I know how
Yeah.
long it takes to go from A to B. And then I kind of allocate, okay, well, maybe I'll need 5 minutes for parking and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just a
Uh-huh.
lot easier.
Right. No, no, and that makes perfect sense.
Mm.
I think, even just teaching people how to do that is probably life opening
Yeah,
for a
absolutely.
lot of people.
When I
Yeah.
think about when my kids were younger and I was taking them to school and things like that, some of the time I wasn't even working, and yet I was always so busy. I don't know what I was doing,
Mm, mm.
why I was always late, but I never seemed to be able to organize myself. So, now
Yeah.
I've got two businesses really and the job, and yet I'm quite organized. So
Uh-huh. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think a lot of it too, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, but from my personal experience, if you're married or living with somebody,
mm-hmm.
that just adds one more schedule
Mm-hmm.
because they've got all their schedule stuff. And then it's like,
Yes,
oh, well, I need you to go do this with me. Or,
yeah,
right. And so
absolutely,
it,
yeah. Last night
yeah,
I was at a party that was nothing to do with me. It was to do with my husband's work.
yeah,
So it was a client of theirs that was having a party, so I was required to be there. You know,
hmm, yeah,
it's interesting. Whereas if you're single, obviously that doesn't happen. You can just choose your own social events.
yeah, 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 yeah. Or, or any of a whole list of other things, right? I mean, going to the doctor or, their relatives are coming into town. I don't know. I mean, it's just, there's a whole nother dimension when you're part of a group,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
my
with your
my
kids as
husband.
well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because for example, so we live in the Caribbean and we're from the
Mm.
UK. Our kids are now all kind of more or less adults. But when they come back here, they visit the dentist, the doctor, the optician, etc. And sometimes, well, they'll make their own appointments, but sometimes I'll make them, and sometimes my husband will make them.
Uh-huh.
But he doesn't
Uh-huh.
necessarily take into account the fact that I'll be at work at that time or I'll be coaching at that time.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, just if you want me to do the driving, let me schedule the appointment because I know when I'm
Yeah.
free. You schedule
Yeah.
it for that time you're collecting. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's and I think, and I know you and I have talked about this as well, that at a certain level, what that also does is it empowers both people in a relationship and not just the men and the women supporting.
yeah.
And that's something that we women need to get better at.
Yeah. It's good to communicate our needs.
Mhm.
So I mean the more we can communicate, the less we get taken for granted. So
Yeah.
that's really important.
Well, and the fewer arguments.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, when they have arguments, it arises because they haven't actually expressed their needs in terms of needs. They've just had an expectation of somebody
Mhm.
without communicating it first. And they're expecting
Mhm.
someone to read their mind. But, how can someone read your mind? Just because you think something is obvious, it's not obvious to the other person. And
Yeah.
so they kind of think that person should know this. They don't know that. You have to explain it. You have to ask them, will you do such and such, whatever the thing is.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Are you free at
yeah,
this
exactly.
time?
Yeah, exactly. It's really basic, but at the same time, people don't really think about it.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, exactly. Um, and I think it's again, it comes down to putting out there what our own needs are,
Hmm.
um, and staying consistent.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because once we've said what our needs are, we then shouldn't just give in when someone doesn't satisfy that or whatever. You know, like if we're trying to set a boundary, we need to keep to
Yeah,
those boundaries and not expect other people to keep to our boundaries for us. We're the ones
yeah.
that need to kind of sustain that boundary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So what are you finding? I know you said you're doing couples therapy. I know you're kind of limiting that a little bit, but what sorts of things have you found in coaching both sides in the relationship instead of just one person?
Um, Typically, of the couples that I've helped, the
Uh-huh.
situation has been the man has said, "Why won't my wife have sex with me?" And the woman is, "Well, I can't have sex until I've got intimacy." Um, and for men,
Interesting.
they feel intimacy through having sex. So it's like a kind of a vicious circle, which comes first, the chicken or the egg?
Uh-huh.
Does
Yeah.
to give the emotional intimacy before she'll have sex, or does she have to give the sex before he, will give the
Mm-hmm.
side? So, I mean, I would say that you have to, that it's a good idea for you both to kind of try and please the other in the way that they want to be pleased. But, nobody
Mm.
wants to be used, right? Nobody wants to have sex with someone if they don't feel any connection, any emotional connection.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that would just be kind of unpaid prostitution, really. So, um, at least
Yeah, that's
prostitution,
true.
right? But so it is important. But if you want connection with your partner, you also need to build it. You can't just expect it. You have to put
Mm.
effort to build it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, what do I mean by building connection? Well, I mean actually kind of deliberately spending time with them. That's not just watching TV. Spending time with them, showing an interest in them, asking them questions. Maybe doing something that they enjoy doing. Like if your partner loves going cycling or something, you could go cycling with them, even if you're not interested, and maybe they could come and
Mm-hmm.
watch a movie that they're not interested in. And openly discussing things, sharing your vulnerability is incredibly
Ah.
important. And a lot of people are very hesitant to do that. They like to sort of they don't want to look broken, they don't want to look weak, but actually showing your vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. But writers like Brené Brown, she talks a lot about vulnerability. She's written several books and done podcasts and things and TED
Yeah.
Talks.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And,
Yep.
and it's all about how vulnerability is a strength. We shouldn't be ashamed of our sort of softer side. Mm.
Yeah. 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 Isn't it interesting that and I love Brene Brown. I'm not saying this as a criticism. I don't want it to sound like it. Um, I think it's so interesting that we as women are trying to be more like the men, but the men aren't trying to be more like the women.
I think it's a generational thing, because I think a lot
Probably.
of younger men are much more in touch with their feminine side.
Yes,
And
that's true.
they are doing things like, I mean, even buying kind of toiletries, like moisturizers for their
Oh,
faces, which
Yes.
The older men never did. You know, they'd probably think it was a bit sort of wussy. um, and you know, getting into cooking and things like this.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 Well, the cooking, I think some men got into, even the older ones.
Right, exactly.
That's one of those things that people either love or they hate, you know.
It's always been a bit of a strange one because there's nothing to say that women should cook more than men.
True.
And, you know, when you think of kind of cavemen or something, you know, going off and going off and catching some animal, you know, they probably put it on the fire. It's probably could have been the man that put it on the fire. And when people have barbecues off, it's the man that does the barbecuing and the woman that does the cooking in the kitchen, which just doesn't make any sense. It's exactly the same. And then you think of all the famous,
you're right.
Most of the famous chefs traditionally were men, and it used to be on human chef. Now, thankfully, there are more. But it seems to me so funny that a lot of men have that, still have, you know, to this day, have this attitude that women have to do the cooking.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too, and I say this from a personal perspective, is sometimes the women prefer to do the cooking.
Well,
you know.
I think possibly that's true, and possibly they just prefer the way it tastes when they do the cooking.
Well, that's why they prefer to do the cooking. But
right.
No, it just I don't know, on a personal perspective, I prefer to do it simply because there are a lot of things I can't eat, and there's things that you know, so it's just easier. And then if you know, for my husband, I'll make certain things because that's what he likes to eat. Mostly it's the same stuff, but you know, but otherwise he cooks for himself quite a lot. Good. Yeah. But I think you're right. I think you're right, especially of a certain generation. I mean, my generation for sure. That was, you know, it was hard to even find a job being a woman when I got out of school. So
it's so tough.
Yeah.
Which makes it so, like, when women have succeeded who are from, you know, an older generation, it's so admirable. They've got like CEO or something like that. Gosh.
Yeah.
So much to fight against to get where they are. Which is great.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely. And it's yeah, we can talk about that after we get off. I'll tell you about my family. Yes. But
like
oh yeah, it's an interesting story. So but anyways, it's I think that it definitely, life is getting better. I think women have become much more aware and much more, I'm trying to think what the word is that I'm trying to think, you know, that they know what they want and they're going to see if they can get it, not necessarily in an aggressive, it's partially aggressive, but it's not.
Focused and driven.
Yes, exactly. Assertive, I think was the word I was trying to think of. You know, not get out of my face kind of, you know, but being assertive and willing to discuss. But then we've always been willing to discuss the problem. The other half hasn't always been willing to discuss.
That's true.
But I think they're getting better as well.
Yeah. And it's good to see that, you know, even in other cultures, women are getting they are getting a better deal, although there's still, you know, a long way to go. Yeah. No, that's very true in some parts of the world, unfortunately. Yeah. I saw the other day, I was over in Colorado and I was in the Denver and I saw one of those adverts with Malala, and it talked about women or girls should need to learn history, but they also should be making history. And then it said something like you within you, which I thought was nice. So we all have to do what we're called to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So, and making history doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like the first person. You don't have to be like Amelia Earhart and be the first woman to fly a plane across the British Channel, I think it was. You don't have to be like the first woman to do something, but it could be like the first woman in your family to do something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Something like that.
Well, and the neat thing about doing that and taking those steps is that then you are what's the right word? Modeling, I guess, behavior for other women and younger women, and that's the important part. Yeah, for sure. So, but anyways, yeah. So are you finding that women are responsive to your message and what you're
Yes, definitely. Yeah. In my Facebook group, I do weekly live trainings. And I send them out. I send the link out to people. And really lovely messages back saying, "Oh, I love what you're doing, keep going," and all this kind of thing, which is really good.
All right.
And really saying that they find what I do helpful. So it's good to know.
Yeah, I know. That's great. That's great. That's what I always complain about with doing my podcast, is that people don't comment very much on podcasts.
Right.
It's really kind of funny. Yeah. Well, because I think it's because people listen to it and they're not in a place where you can comment.
Well, yes.
You know what I mean?
I usually listen to podcasts when I'm on a walk or I'm filling the dishwasher,
exactly,
doing my cooking.
Yeah.
I'm not really concentrating on commenting. I'm just listening. I just listening to it what I can get, kind of thing. And not I think that people are sort of doing that. So that kind of sounds selfish, but what I mean is, it's not really the priority to comment. It's not.
Oh no, exactly. I agree.
So, whereas when I'm sending out a message saying, "Do you want the link to this?" and they say yes, then it's kind of that's a conversation. So that's when they're more likely to actually say, "Yeah, by the way, I really like it."
Yeah. Oh no, exactly. And I think Facebook and LinkedIn and those kinds of places are much better at generating conversations.
Right. Yeah.
Than Apple Podcasts or.
Right. Okay. Yes, certainly. I've seen lots of really good conversations on LinkedIn. When someone's posted an article, it's like hundreds of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's no, I'm just thinking of the other places like Instagram and stuff like that. Comments, not so big on Instagram. They do likes and stuff.
I used to do Instagram every day, and I would get likes, but I wouldn't really get very many comments at all. It just like share it here, and then give me a link to where I was supposed to share it, but not really getting into. So.
No, I agree, and I it just shows how all these different things have grown up in different ways.
And also, I think it's probably how we use it. I mean, they're probably out there. There may be people who are getting into great conversations when they're on Instagram, but
Yeah, I guess I just haven't seen it. I see a lot of the numbers for the likes and
Mm.
reactions or whatever seem to be really high, and then you look to, it'll tell you how many comments there are, and there's like 3,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So, but anyways, we're off on a different subject. Um, so, anyways, I think, would you like to do a little wrap up or something of what you've been seeing and you know with
Sure.
people, and any advice or anything that you want to give people, women, men,
Okay.
all of the
Well,
above?
um, so all I would say is, like, if you're finding that you're overwhelmed because you're trying to balance different tasks, different kind of roles in life, um, try and sit down and schedule what you have to do, schedule what you want to do, and schedule your self-care. Because sometimes, as when, especially women, or men who are in a role of kind of looking after children, we spend the whole time looking after other people and not looking after ourselves. And I find that a very small amount of time dedicated to looking after myself goes a long way. So, for example, my morning routine, well, I have to walk the dog, because if I don't walk the dog in the mornings, the whole day will be a disaster. So this is
Yeah,
slightly
I bet.
yeah, so I walk the dog, but that's good for me as well. And then I come home and I do some dancing. And, I might dance for 15 minutes, but I might only dance for 2 minutes. And it still makes a difference to me. It wakes me up, because as I say, I can't drink coffee because it keeps me up all night. So I have to dance to wake myself up. And it kind of makes me feel positive, because I'm listening to like positive music, praise music, and that kind of thing. So it works kind of mind, heart, body, and soul, really, which is really good. And then I do some journaling as well. And again, it doesn't have to be a long time. I'll just fill one side of A4. What's going on in my mind. And then, I'll spend some time in prayer or meditation. So I do these things, and I don't necessarily do all of them every single day, but I try to. But that really sets me up for a good day. And then I've recorded myself doing affirmations, so I might play them
nice
to work. And being a coach, I also have recorded myself asking myself coaching questions. So I'll listen to those.
Good idea. Yeah.
So that really helps me. And it's like a self-coaching session.
Yeah.
There's all these different things that you can do to take care of yourself, to practice self-love. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Those are all.
But if anyone
ideas.
would like some coaching, or would like to join a Facebook group, Calls to Courage, then look me up on Facebook. My name's Fiona Pimentel. As I say, the group is called To Courage, and we can go from there.
Yeah, and I will put that information into the show notes. So for anybody who wants to find them, that's where they will be. And yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Susan, for having me
Oh,
on.
well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Some good pointers and some good things for people, both men and women, to be watching out for and adding into or subtracting from their lives.
Yes, that's right.
So, yeah, it's not all just adding or changing. It's
yeah, sometimes we have to take
looking
things
at
out.
everything. That's right. Yep. Look at everything that you're doing, and decide if it's helpful or not.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much.
So
Sylvia.
thank you. And I am just going to say that neither of us are doctors, and this is not to be seen as medical advice. And if you're having any kind of emotional issues, I would probably go and, especially if they're big ones, go and talk to someone, a professional, more than the rest of us. So, okay. And with that, I will see everybody next week.